Have a little perspective about the stuff we howl about here. I'm sorry your professor said something you didn't like. That won't be a problem with the Taliban because you're not allowed to go to school. In Saudi Arabia, grown women can be jailed for doing the kind of things we think of as routine without the permission of a male guardian. China rounds you up if you're the wrong religion and puts you in camps. More children in Burkina Faso work than are in school. Only 5% of Burundians have electricity. The homicide rate in Honduras is 8 times what it is here. The inflation rate in Venezuela is 2,719%. The Philippines, in the last 5 years, has put to death 27,000 low-level drug dealers. My old job. In North Korea, people starve to death. The only people who starve here are doing it for a role. And the only people who have no water live in California. If you think America is irredeemable, turn on the news or get a passport and a ticket on one of those sketchy airlines that puts its web address on the plane. There's a reason Afghan mothers are handing their babies to us.
And with that, welcome. This is All Minus One. And as the name says down there in the corner, I am Bill. Welcome, welcome. So I do not normally stream on the Thursdays. And I want to start streaming more often during the week again. As my daughter's getting older, she needs a little bit less attention. But it's still going to be hit or miss. Tuesdays and Fridays are the planned days. Tomorrow, I will be back at 3 p.m. Eastern talking about Stoicism and Christianity, the similarities, the differences, and eventually, over the course of many a weeks, we will probably get to some historical context of how things have changed and how that these influences continue in our thinking today. So before I get into the material for today, though, I just want to remind everybody, anyone who's watching live, that there is an Entropy if you wish to go over there and use that. It is a free speech platform. Entropy link is in the description in both the DLive and the YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, I am on DLive. If YouTube were to yeet me, I can stream over there. I can actually stream without YouTube there and with Entropy as well, but most of the audience is here. So this is the primary, right? But Entropy also allows you to make donations. Of course, there's a subscribe star as well, and a PayPal if you guys wish to donate and help my family and I out. It's greatly appreciated. So with all that out of the way, that is, let us look at what I wanted to get to here, and that is live not by lies. Now, this article from the Postal magazine is about a book that was released. I cannot read to you guys a 250-page book, but I can read to you a summation and an address toward this. And then I want to read something else afterward. Today is probably going to be a shorter stream, most likely. So, Live Not by Lies, a manual for Christian dissents. So, let's get started. A disease is going around. No, not the Wuhan plague. This is malady only affects the right. Or this malady, I said malady. This malady only affects the right, and I name it Scruntonism, after Roger Scruton. The synonyms of Scruntonism are razor-sharp ability to identify one's enemies and to understand their plans to destroy us, combined with a complete inability to imagine any way in which those enemies can be defeated. Yes, it's a problem on the right now, isn't it? For a sufferer of this disease, his headspace is occupied by nostalgia and fear in various proportions, mostly the former in the late Roger Scruton's case, mostly the latter in Rod Dare's case. Scrantonism, Scruntonism's harm is that it makes sufferers ignore the only question that matters for the right today. What are you willing to do given that your enemies are utterly committed to destroying you and yours? And that's a pretty important question, folks. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to give up? What cost are you willing to pay? Now, my wife had told me she watched the video I made the other day about the old Lieutenant Colonel Schneller. I think I always get his name confused, guys. It's too many vowels and consonants together. It's too confusing for a dyslexic. In any case, she was talking about, yeah, you're right that he had to put his career and everything on the line. It's like, well, yeah, and most of you out there are afraid to do that. Because I left a job, not even the last major job I had, but I left a job 4 years ago now that I had for 13 years. That 2-3 years from now I could have been retired from at about 50% of my pay and gone on to do anything else. But I stopped working there because I knew that I was going to be miserable and not have the life that I wanted as long as I worked there. And I watched day after day people I worked with for years, people I considered friends or at least good acquaintances, people that I trusted with my life, and the fact that sometimes we had dangerous conditions to work in because that was the kind of work that I did. And I watched how miserable 90% of them were day in and day out. Oh, well, thank you, Auntie. I see that you're here. I don't expect a lot of people to be here, given that I don't normally stream today. But again, going to start trying. But day in and day out, these people were miserable with their lives, yet they wanted to hedge their bets for some sweet retirement in some distant off future. And that retirement wasn't even that good. I was telling my wife, like, at best, most of the people there were going to be getting out of there making, $30,000, maybe $40,000 a year out of their retirement, out of their pension, with no health care. And, I had a religious experience, and with that, I bided my time. I took some time. I planned it, but I left my job, and I did some stupid things afterwards. So I didn't spend my money as well as I should have, but I put myself in that position because I wasn't going to wait till I had another job. I wasn't going to wait until I had everything set up perfectly. I wasn't going to wait until, the heavens aligned. I needed to take action. And so I did so. And with all that, I had to get other work later on, and I did a similar thing. I left because of ethical and moral reasons. So few of us are willing to do such a thing. So few of us are willing to do anything. So let's continue to read. I used to be a darer fan, however, to steal the line from Aaron Wren, though he was talking about Tim Keller, not Dare, and live not by lies, has partially restored my opinion of Rod as a pillar of today's right. It is an outstanding book, tightly written and tightly focused. That does not mean it is complete, for reasons I will lay out today, but it is good for what it is, the sharp diagnosis of the ways, means, and ends of our enemy. Oh, alas, poor York. I knew him well, Horatio. We, good listening while driving. Well, I appreciate it. Good, appreciate it, York. Are you changing your name? I know you're somebody else on the entropy, and I keep forgetting who you are, so forgive me. Spookstar, see you over there on the D Lives. Did you get my little messages I just sent you? Seeing some links. You were asking me about Islam. I told you I wasn't the expert. Jay Smith was the guy I was thinking of. Go watch his stuff. He breaks it down pretty well. There are other people you can watch if you want to get into why Islam is probably fabricated. People say the same thing about Christianity, but the difference is there's actually historical evidence on one side and not on the other. The outline of books is simple. Dara shows how life in America, and more broadly, much of the West through America, is his focus, is swiftly becoming indistinguishable from life under totalitarian communism. In its essence, if not yet all its externals. The left, now as then, will do anything to impose its evil will across all societies. These are obvious on their face and established in detail in many of my other writings, and also in enormous length on Dara's blog at The American Conservative. The left's political vision is wholly illusionary, while at the same time utterly destructive. A necessary part of their plan, again, now and then, is suspense in all dissent. Suppression of all dissent, especially religious dissent, through controlling all aspects of every citizen's lives. This plan is already largely implemented for many sectors of American society, although Dara claims this is soft totalitarianism, different in degree from the hard totalitarianism of communism at its height. Different in what? We're not marching guys up against the walls. What do you mean at its height? Because at its height would have been the beginning, at the beginning would have been the majority of the mass genocides, murders, whatever else. At its height, things kind of calm down. We can look at the CCP. It's kind of the same. It's always in the beginning. The purging happens, and there's a long period of contention and trouble, and then everything kind of settles and the populace gets in line, and then everyone lives the lie. Now, if you recall, last week I read to you from Solzhenitsyn's right here, Live Not by Lies. So, this is taken, of course, from that little essay that Solzhenitsyn wrote years ago. So the author here is going to address that. He talks of, I don't know how to say his names, Kinsol's, Milos, yeah, I guess that's right. Kinsol's, Milos, yeah. And a pill of Marathi Bing, of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, of Hannah Arendt. He definitely draws parallels between the rise of communism in Europe and other present situations. He identifies the appeal of the left and of the totalitarian ideology. Okay. He talks of progressivism as religion and of the cult of social justice. He talks of woke capitalism and the surveillance state built by the lords of tech. So woke capitalism doesn't exist, folks. I don't know what that is, but if we're talking about multinational corporations that are publicly owned, that's not capitalism. Capitalism involves private ownership. That, and the fact that most of these companies are subsidized in one way or another or have protective laws, rent seeking through the government, and any slew of other governmental controls, having a lot of cronyism, nepotism, that kind of stuff with the government. These aren't private entities. They're just not. So this is a huge misnomer that we need to get away from. And I've said it here before, and of course I still use the word capitalism, but we should stop using the enemy's language on that and talk about free markets. It takes a while to change your own vernacular, though. It takes a while for you to unless you're going to specifically try to build some sort of lexicon, which I have no intention of doing myself, but we are all indoctrinated in these things. Like the default is leftism, folks. That's why people appeal to it so much. He talks of the oppressive social credit system in China under the funny heading, the mark of the East. So like the mark of the beast, it's the mark of the East, right? Yeah. Well, I'm probably going to start getting into that maybe Monday. I'm not sure what I'm going to do Monday. I think if I can stream Monday, I might start talking about the occult ties in the UN. Maybe on Thursdays, I'm going to start doing a series on Revelations. And I want to go through it because people keep talking about it. I hear stuff. I watched Elijah Schaefer the other day on Tim Pool spout off a bunch of stuff, some true, some not, some of it not even biblical, but he said it was in there, and it's not. So we'll see. We'll see. But I just want to go through it and read it simply and try to explain how you guys can research and look at it. And I think a simple explanation of what it is versus this mystified thing that we make it out to be. These chapters are uniformly excellent. I strongly recommend them to anyone not already familiar with these truths. That is the ones he just said above. But my purpose here today is not to summarize what is happening now. Many others have summarized this book well. And to be clear, as with most of my book reviews, I'm not actually reviewing Dare's book. Rather, I am delivering my own thoughts. If you don't like that, well, you're in the wrong place. A crucial integral ambiguity pervades the entire book. So a crucial, internal ambiguity pervades the entire book. Dare's frame is totalitarianism. He challenges men and women who suffer under the evilest regimes the world has ever known. He paints a picture that offers gruesome tales of torture as a regular instrument of state control. And guys, I've not pre-read this, but I would assume that he's going to go down the line of thinking that I've touted before and say that we're not going to see things the same. It's not going to be, there's different technologies today. It's not going to be exactly like it was back then. There's a lot more people. It's going to be a lot harder for them to control things on the ground level. So they have to do it by other means. The primary means is always going to be propaganda. Then it's the monetary system. Why do you think they want everyone on a centralized currency? Because if money was in the hands of the people, the government could never control the people appropriately. That's why the founding fathers wanted government or wanted money in the hands of the people, didn't want it in the hands of the government, which is why they set a gold and silver standard. Without a commodity standard such as that, there's always manipulations prone. Always, even with cryptocurrency. If they cut you off from access, you can no longer use it. You know what I will always have, though, on hand? I will always have food. I will always have water. I will always have rounds for my firearms or for other people's firearms. These things are commodities. Of course, there are many other useful things that you could stock up on. And I'm not in any way, shape, or form opposed to folks who want to stay on a gold standard or would like to accrue gold or other precious metals. The issue is are you actually going to be able to trade that? Is it going to be seen as useful in the coming future? So in any case, that's kind of a tangent, but you know how I am. I go off on those. Let's see here. He says, the epigraph he uses here from Solzhenitsyn says, such evil is possible everywhere on earth. And Solzhenitsyn was not talking about a social credit system, but real torture and death. Well, China still does that. Yet Dare claims repeatedly that this might happen here. Well, what are they doing to the Capitol rioters? So, you know, and granted, most of those people that are locked up probably did jack all. It's hard to say because the information is not really available. Instead, he suggests a Huxley et fortune, or sorry, future, or Mercury Bing. I'm not aware of who that is, or Soshan Zuboff. PCR type consumerist monitoring. At the same time, though, he talks about ever growing state and and more private corporate actions that are not yet physical torture, yet are meant as severe punishment, such as job loss and social ostracism. The reader is confused. What precisely is the future Dara predicts, and why? The question remains unanswered. Well, again, I don't know, but as far as corporations and all that go, it's because they're tied to the state and they're bowing down to it. Which again is why you all have to live truthfully. And when your job says do something that you don't agree with, you need to tell them to screw off. Dara does, however, offer a type of solution. In the face of these poisonous headwinds, he prescribes spiritually centered private organizing, in essence, his famous Benedict option. The Christian dissent needs to draw close in authentic spiritual leadership, clerical, lay, or both, and form small cells of fellow believers with whom he can pray, sing, study scripture, and read other books important to their mission. Well, I agree with that. I've advocated that quite a bit, but there's got to be more to it. Not everyone's in the faith. He must be prepared to suffer, because in the new dispensation, he will suffer if he refuses to worship the new gods. Dara, in short, recommends the parallel polis with a strong religious component. So he is espousing NRX ideas. I mean, assumingly. I haven't read the book. Well, howdy, Shelley. How we do? Let me run through this chat real quick again. Spookstar. Spookstar said, yeah, I actually watched the two videos you sent. And this one guy called Dan Gibson. I think I watched him the other day. I hadn't watched him in a long time. Vids didn't convince you much. I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know if you're Muslim. I mean, like I said, I don't really care, but I don't know how you think that documentation from 200 years later and what the earliest scholars said, which is different from what they say today, is, you know, a consistent narrative throughout. We literally have consistent narratives through Christianity and early church writings. So when people go back, not to mention nobody questioned Christ's existence until, I don't know, the Enlightenment. But either way, I'm not even comparing this to Christianity. I mean, I get people's objections, whatever. But Islam's came out of nowhere, literally. And there's not any historical documentation. No one was literate then. They stole repeatedly from Jewish and Christian texts that were apocryphal. They weren't scripture. So yeah, there's stuff there, man. But again, I don't know. In my opinion, because I am a Christian, I would say that it's I believe it to be a false religion. But again, all men are, in my opinion, they should be worshiping whatever God they believe is true to them and whatever tenets are best for them. So, I mean, that's generally my stance. So, anyways, that was from like 2 streams ago, though, man. So I just thought I would address that specifically because I couldn't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. And I try to interact with my audience. Let's get back here to what my mouse will work, what I was looking at. Shelley said, maybe corporations aren't bowing down. Maybe they are the ones orchestrating this and paying off politicians. Well, by the way, Spookstar, you know Jay Smith has like dozens and dozens of videos. I would watch the ones that are numbered in a series and whatever. It doesn't convince you. I mean, I've spoken with Muslims. I know how they operate. They're very, very great at discipleship, whereas Christians, at least modern Christians, are not. So they're very polemic and they have great talking points and they know their surahs pretty well. And the church, at least the Protestant church, doesn't do that well. I think a lot of Catholics just walk through life, just like a lot of Orthodox did until recently. And don't get me wrong, most Protestants just walk through life too. They shut the church and get the feel goods. So the Christianity I speak of is not the same, because I think I look back to when life was much different, and not about institutions. So, in any case, at least as far as religion goes, as that religion went. He has discussed this before, as the text continues. I have also discussed this before in what it will not be allowed, because our enemies have learned from the earlier defeats. And as Darrow himself repeatedly says, they have vastly more powerful tools than their communist forebears did. Thus, for example, he is correct that families are resistance cells, but our enemies see this too, which is why families will not be allowed to be resistance cells, but will be forcibly broken up if parents dare to instruct their child aright. No, the parallel polis will be of short duration, if indeed it can be set up at all. And the Benedict option without an armed wing is dead on arrival. Yes and no. I don't think that's realistic. And it's not realistic because there are way too many towns that are quite isolated that they just won't bother with unless they want to waste the money on bombing it, just absolutely wiping it out. And, for me, I'm not afraid of death and I'm ready to meet my maker anytime. So, not a big deal for me, but for other people, obviously, there's a lot of fear there. But generally speaking, even where I'm at now, man, I cannot see being an hour outside of DC over here in West Virginia. I cannot see the federal government coming in here and trying to occupy the land, which is mostly rural. And, we got crazy windy roads everywhere. And this isn't really a super mountainous, not like the more western part of the state. So, I would say refer to or defer to Afghanistan. Dara does not offer any non-passive mechanism for success, but I will just wait a few minutes. Dara recommends Christians witness such as that of Vakov Benda and his family. Again, not someone I'm aware of. Let's look at who that is real quick. Oh, The Long Night of the Watchman. Okay. Author. He recommends retaining cultural memory and accepting suffering, but nothing succeeds like success. So, well, no, we have to. I don't know about accepting suffering, but understand the battles that we're fighting, right? We know about the Bendas because communism fell. And communism fell both because it is in internal contradictions and because it faces massive external pressure put on it by the West. Disagree. The West helped it accelerate. If the West stayed away, though, and they let communism expand, if we didn't get involved in, let's say, Korea and Vietnam and whatever else, if we didn't get involved in opening up China, these systems would have fell on their face. Look at North Korea, guys. They have a whole caste system. Everybody's poor. You can only go down in rank in your caste system, in their caste system, that is. And when we see that, the only ones that live well are the ones at the top of the system that who have power. I don't want that for the world, but that's all communism devolves into. That's the idiotic utopianism of it. Oh, let's create a totalitarian state to ensure that this happens and expect the totalitarian state to give up its own power, because that happens. No, you got to fight for it. You always got to fight for it. And the communists know that, but like he said, it has internal contradictions. It's self-contradictory. That's why you have Antifa, who claim to be communist and claim to be anti-fascist and claim to be anarchist, but yet they use force. They use brute force. They know that they have to. That is all part of their beliefs. They know the system doesn't work without brute force. They're a bunch of slavers. they're as unclear as to what exactly he expects the future to bring to people of today, situated like the Ben does. In essence, his arguments seem to be that it ultimately worked out for dissidents under communism, so it will someday, and in a manner yet be shown, work for us, maybe, or maybe not. In other words, there seem to think that the parallel point or polis of self executing as long as strong religious faith is kept. Moreover, whether he sees it or not, we are indeed heading to hard totalitarianism, not merely soft totalitarianism. We've been in soft totalitarianism since at least the Patriot Act, folks. At least we've implemented soft totalitarianism our entire history of the nation. All right. Now, it's been little bits here and there, but it's certainly been a thing we've done. From all the way back from the Aliens to Sedition Act to Abraham Lincoln. We can look at the internment camps of Japanese Americans during World War II. Obviously, there was Jim Crow. Come on. Our enemies' injustice delayed, this justice denied. That inscrapable internal logic combined with Garridian scapegoating means soft totalitarianism will never be enough for them. We already have soft totalitarianism for any white collar worker and anybody who sees the demands for compliance are accelerating, not slowing down. There you go. And if anyone here right now or later on watched the Injustified Memes last night, I kind of talked about this at the end of the show because Tank was asking, why are we doing this? It doesn't make any sense why we would do this on purpose with Afghanistan. It makes absolute sense depending on your belief system, depending on how you view the world, your worldview, right? And my worldview is informed by Christianity. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not biased. You could say I'm biased. Everyone's biased, right? But I mean, I actually try to actively fight my bias. But all I see constantly is the same little circle of elites getting together, dictating how the rest of us are going to live, and how that is not in line with the law of our nation, nor with human liberty in general. And I strongly believe in human liberty because I believe that that's how God intended us to be. The reader sees no reason at all why we're not heading to prison camps and the executioner's bullet, because Dara doesn't give one, while at the same time talking a great deal about the Gulag, the Romanian torture camp at the Pedetist. I guess that's how you say that. Whatever, Pedetesti, yeah, and so on, continually recurring to such history. Then he says American culture is far more individualistic than Chinese culture, so that political resistance will almost certainly prevent Chinese-style hard totalitarianism from gaining a foothold here. Well, this was the point, again, I was saying last night, that America has to be crushed because, yes, we do have more of a resistance culture and more of a skepticism to the government. Less so these days than a lot of Europeans, which is very surprising to me, but it's true. But still, I think that there are a lot of people who just aren't aware because they have too much trust in the system. And I think that's silly and naive. Why would you trust a complex system? Like, it is doomed to fail. It is going to break down. You shouldn't trust it. You should be skeptical of it. This is whistling past the graveyard. How has this supposed individualism slowed down our enemies even a whit? Soft totalitarianism may lie on the far side of hard totalitarianism, as it was with late communism, but it will get worse long before it gets better. The reader gets the impression there is Darrows is pulling his punches, afraid of being seen as too extreme, too out there in our controlled political discourse. Hope is not a plan. Yeah, true enough. He should see that he even quotes a Slavic dissident. If they had to come at us in the 70s, they might have succeeded. But we always remembered that the goal was to turn our small numbers into a number so big they could not stop us. But see, you have to get past there. That's important. But in order for that to happen, for numbers to gain, for the cause of liberty, people have to pay the price. There is a cost to all of this. You either decide and acknowledge that you are a slave and you will live that way, or you will pay the price for dissenting and living as a free person. It always reminds me, I bring it up often enough, of Aristotle talking about people who believe that they're not slaves. But of course that they're slaves, because their people were conquered. They're inferior to us. They must be slaves. But for some reason, there's one slave out there in every dozen that thinks he is a free man, even though you have your boot on his neck. That man is free because you cannot take his mind. Cannot take certain things. You may take my life, but I'm not concerned about that. You cannot take my mind from me. And you could torture me and try and do that. Sure. I believe in God more than I believe those here in this world, though. You know, the scripture that says, he who is greater than me than he who is in the world. And I honestly believe that, because there's plenty of accounting of it. Plenty of accounting of Christians through the ages that were wrongfully persecuted and held their ground, burned at the stake, and did not even flinch. Darrow doesn't acknowledge that getting those big numbers is crucial to success, along with his will to action, using in later communism for mass demonstrations. And he has no plans for getting them. Only in solidarity with others can we find the spiritual and communal strength to resist. True enough. But what is solidarity here? Is it meeting at the catacombs to pray for a better day, or meeting to plan action? Apparently only the former. Yeah. I don't know. Again, have not read this book. Let's see what Anti-Commie put in here. Just happened to catch the chat there. It says, every man upon this earth, death cometh soon or late, and how the man die better than facing death's better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his father and the temple of his gods. It's nice. Is that Catholic something? Spookstar said, yeah, I'll watch those other videos. I'll tell you what happened in chat. Yeah. I don't know, buddy. I mean, like I said, half the time with your questions, I mean, I'm going to answer them sincerely, but I don't know if you're trying to troll me or not. I mean, if I'm going to be honest. And no one's on Entropy today, but low viewership today, considering it's not my regular Romans poem. Okay. All right. So yes, Darrow, whatever I'm saying his name is, Darrow offers some legislative solutions. He makes sense, but as Bismarck said, politics is the art of the possible. He meant compromise is necessary, right? But if your enemies have all the power and have no need to compromise to get everything they want, what is possible of what you want is nothing. Right. And this was the problem with Trump. Some people would argue, lots of people would argue, that no, Trump is just a shill, blah, 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 blah. I don't think so, guys. I think he doesn't know the depths of these things, and he was trying to play the art of the deal. Um, Regardless, our economy was great. It wasn't perfect. We would have hit a bubble. I understand how these things work, but it was a lot better than it had been. I don't know, since about 2008, right? It's a long time ago. It was the first time we had an actual raise in working wages in years, in two presidencies. That is under Bush and Obama. It's insane. Nobody with actual power ever associate his name in public with there's legislative proposal because they are cowards and they refuse to be seen opposing glomo homo. Political proposals in the current frame will not come to fruition. They will die like the seeds of the parable of the sower, either among the brambles or fallen on the rocky ground. Legislative proposals are not a mechanism for success. 100% agree with you. You got to think local. Again, I didn't read this full article. It's rather long. I have a PDF of this. It says it's 11 pages. So, but we're going to try and get through it, guys. What I can tell you is that both of these things, both of these arguments, as they're laying out, the critique of this gentleman's book and the person writing the critique, are both correct. That is something that we need to accept quite often, is that sometimes it's not either or, sometimes it's all of the above. And we get into a lot of arguments, on the right about nitty gritty details sometimes that aren't important. I think we can have our little communes in the mountains or whatever you want to call them. I don't want a commune, but create our own little towns. I've been espousing this more or less since I started doing YouTube stuff here a year ago. And a lot of people talk about it. And it's quite possible. And who's going to mess with some little sleepy town out in the middle of nowhere? No, I know what you're saying. But Bill, the leftists have to come for everybody. Yes, they do. I know. I get it. They always do. But they're pretty content with controlling everything. Like, I don't see leftists trying to, they're pretty content with controlling everything as far as centers of power, like cities. I don't see them going to the Amish and trying to force communism on the Amish. This doesn't happen. They operate in towns, folks. They operate in city centers. They operate in areas like that. And of course, then they get the schools because that's how they indoctrinate everybody else and the media and whatever. But as far as their actual presence, the people willing to come out and do things, 90% of the time, it's large cities, which are already lost because they're already centers of power. And none of these people would make it in the woods. What was the Hammer City, the communist out in Colorado that wanted to build? Go watch some videos of that stuff before the sheriff came and kicked them off the land that they didn't properly buy. They had no clue what they were doing. It's like watching the Spaz or the Chaz or the Chop or whatever else they have that will be coming in the future. It's just a big pipe dream. What we need to be more concerned with is not the revolution coming to everybody, but the takeover of the cities and the suburbs, because I believe, it seems that the suburbs will be, at least the directly outside of the cities with the big urban sprawl, will be locked down and controlled. Again, there are only so many people to implement these things. This is always a logistical problem. I got $1 raise under Trump and 75 cents under Biden. I don't know about you, man, but well, I guess I was working under Trump, but yeah, I saw my taxes decrease, and a lot of people were getting raises. I saw it way before the coup happened. I saw places like FedEx and stuff like that upping prices, which I worked at briefly. So they went from like $15 an hour to 18. They're paying like $24 an hour now or something crazy. But I'm not about to go back and jack my knee up again and work in a factory for 8 hours with a mask on, or 5 hours, or whatever I end up working. So on average, though, there's data to suggest that a lot of families got a huge bump in pay. All right, let's get back to this. Enough of me rambling. Scrutinism, of which you can see there has a bad case, is a call to be a beautiful loser. Nice. But you can't inspire anyone with a program that offers being a loser. People cowering under fire want a plan. They want a leader to point not only to what Christ would do, but how that would help them. And more importantly, their children come out the other side cleansed and victorious. Well, I can tell you what Christ will do. Go read the Olivet Discourse. Hey, look at this. I actually have the Gateway Bible open. Let's go here to Matthew 24. Let's read this whole thing real quick. And then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." So the Olivet Discourse starts off with the prophecy that the temple will be destroyed, which was fulfilled in 70 AD. Now, there's a thing called dispensationalism, which I'm not going to get deeply into, but in Christianity, basically it means people believe that certain things happen at certain times, and then within that, they also tend to pick and choose, let's say, when certain blessings or things are going to be espoused upon people or whatever else. I don't know, like in certain periods of time. Like a lot of people will teach, a form of dispensationalism is that there are no more miracles in Christianity. And this is literally taught in Christianity. It's insane. There's nothing in the Bible that says that. There's a little part that they take from the Bible completely out of context where they assume it means that. But I can read to you from early church writers where they talked about how, they saw miracles and healed people and whatever else. Yet some Christians today believe all those things ceased with the apostles. So I know of living miracles. I know a person that a doctor cannot tell you why they're alive today, because their heart, or the aorta in their heart, was completely crushed, disintegrated when the surgeon touched it. Had no idea why she survived. He couldn't figure it out. Went to my dad, said, "I don't know if you're religious." My dad's like, "I'm her minister." So, in any case. Now, as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" So, two separate things, right? First, he says the temple will fall, and then he says the sign, the return of his coming. And the first thing Jesus says, "Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet, for nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginnings of sorrows." So far, what has Jesus said? And just, comparing this right here. He said he offers no, where was that here? So people cowering under fire want a plan. They want a leader to point not only to what Christ would do, but how they will help them. Well, let's look at what Christ will do, though. What he would do, what he suggests. It says, "See that you are not troubled." So first off, don't panic, don't be scared. And I try not to sensationalize here. Whether I do or don't, whatever. I try not to. I'm not trying to be, alarmist. I just want people to wake up and see and be prepared. "For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilence, earthquakes in various places, and all these are the beginnings of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you. And you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Okay, I mean, fair enough, yeah. And then many will be offered, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Okay, sounds like that's still going on, yeah. Jesus said, hey, man, here's the reality. Looks like the reality I live in. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. That's all happened. And because lawlessness will abound, that's antinomianism, the love of many will grow cold. Now, what is this a reference to? The love of many? Is that many people? Yes, but it's also many Christians. It will grow cold. Jesus says in John, you will know each other, or they will know you by the way that you love each other. And he's saying that your people's love will grow cold. If we go to the book of Revelation and we look at, let's say, I don't know, the church of Laodicea that was lukewarm. What's he telling to them? You're neither hot nor cold. You've lost your fervor. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I thought once saved, always saved. No, that's not in the scriptures. It's a lie from Satan. Anyways, I'll keep going. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. So has that happened? Yes. Yes. Not the end, but to all the world and all the nations, except for that one island where the natives basically kill anyone that comes to it. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Okay, so this is interesting because that, well known in the book of Daniel from the early church and even before, was Antiochus Epiphanes, who was not a Roman, but a Greek ruler. And they're using the same type, which the Bible does over and over again, to explain others sitting in the temple. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. He's talking about the Christians, right? Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house, and let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothing. So what is Christ saying? He's saying escape. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days. Why? Because it's hard to go. And pray your flight may not be in the winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such as never been seen since the beginning of the world until this time. No, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Now, I believe that this is talking about what happened in Jerusalem. And this is what the early church believed as well. I think it also parallels other things that are going to happen throughout time and in the future. That's why this is important to look at. But this is what Jesus' advice was to his people. He said, get away, run away from this stuff. Never anything about taking up arms. Then if anyone said to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it, for false Christ and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand. And yet people read this and they still fall for it. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, do not go out. Or look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. I had some people show up to my house one day. I think they were Branch Davidians or some form. There are numerous Branch Davidian still around, folks. It just wasn't Waco. They came in, they tried to tell me that Jesus Christ already came back and all this stuff. And I said, no, he didn't. And I'm like, oh, no, he did. And I said, and then they start telling me that the mark of the beast was Sunday worship. The Branch Davidians are broken off from the Seventh-day Adventists, and that's what the Seventh-day Adventists believe. And that was all from Ellen G. White. And it's just, it's not there. But they believe it's Sunday worship. It's not there. The early church worshipped on Sunday, the Lord's Day, the 8th day. It's in the Bible. But they also worship on Saturday. They did both. That's why we have 2-day weekends, folks. But aside from that, they were trying to tell me all these things. I'm like, that's not historical. Here's this, and that. And there were like 4 of them, and they didn't know how to counter me. But the one girl, man, that she get uppity because I was challenging her entire worldview. She got in my face. She got really uppity, and I was just like, I was kind of just like laughing at her. I didn't know what else to do. It's kind of like, oh, no, you're wrong. No, that's not historically correct. No, she's like, no, the Catholic Church changes to Sunday worship. No, they didn't. They didn't. You don't know your early church history. Just go read what the early church writers wrote. You can see a timeline of events. Go read the history. That's how it works. It plays out. There's tons of it. It's quite voluminous. I mean, I have a book. I haven't picked this up in a while, so it's been sitting there. This is just one book. One book by one of the early church fathers. It's over 500 pages long. There's a lot written, guys. A lot. And then he says, the Son of Man will come as a flash of lightning, meaning that there's no secret rapture or anything like that either. That I hate that stuff. Oh my God. It's not, everyone will know Christ returned. He says, everyone will see. And it says the eagles will be gathered up. And he says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heavens. And this all goes into, what the book of Revelations talks about. Then the signs of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound of trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the 4 winds and one end of heaven to the other. Now learn this parable of the fig tree. When its branches has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So you also, when you see all these things, know that it is near at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. And this generation, some people interpret that to be the Christians of the day, the apostles. I interpret that to mean all believers and all folks that live in this epoch of life. So, but of that day and hour no man knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will be like the coming of the Son of Man. So just wicked and evil. For as in the days of Noah the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. It did not know until the flood came and took them away. So here it goes, who then is a faithful and wise servant whom his master made ruler over his household to give them food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. Assuredly, I say to you that he will make him a ruler over all his goods. This is, goes back to those who will make themselves least will become the greatest, etc. But if that evil servant says in his heart, so he's talking about a Christian, and he just called him evil. My master is delaying his coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with the drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day when he is not looking for him, and an hour that he is not aware of, and will cut him in two and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. This should be the end all. I mean, there are plenty of other statements, but Christ being the word, the purpose, everything else should be the end of any arguments over, people who believe once saved, always saved, or any of that stuff. Christ just said, you turn evil while you're supposed to be a servant, you beat the others, and you do all this other stuff, you're a hypocrite, and I'm going to treat you like one. I'm going to treat you like everyone else. So what did Christ say in all of this? To sum it up, well, he said simply that don't fight, go and run, keep honoring the Lord, watch, be aware. And I take this a step further and I talk about the watchmen in the Old Testament. Is that Ezekiel or Isaiah? I can't remember. I think wherever it's at. Um, the passage of the watchman. He tells him, I will require your blood if you do not warn the people. If you warn the people and they ignore you, your hands are not guilty of anything. But if you do not warn the people and you know, your hands are guilty of blood. So I'm going to get back to this, but let's check the chat real quick. The forgotten depths of D-Live, Matt says. Val, I see you over there on HB. All alone again. Don't get naked. Joke from last night, folks. All right, what's over on the D-Live? So we have talked. Am I a King James only type of guy? No, I am a I prefer the New King James generally because it is used from the Textus Receptus and not more late scripts. So and we can debate and argue over it, but generally I actually use a Septuagint for an Old Testament because it's what the early church used. It's what when you see quotes from the New Testament and they don't line up with your Old Testament, well, that's because your Old Testament is using a Hebrew Old Testament that was written in the 3rd century AD. The Septuagint was done in the 4th or 2nd century BC. So much older. That's what the early church all used. They all spoke Greek, read Aramaic, spoke Aramaic and Greek. That was the norm for them. That was the world that they lived in. And I just think that that's the way to go. We know that the Septuagint is highly accurate. We can look at later translations because we don't have any really old Jewish translations, but all the Hebrew translations that come out later on, those are all against, Christianity. They remove the passage where the virgin, a virgin will be born, and change it to a young lady. Of course, why would it say young lady if there was no distinction there? Every young lady would have been assumed to be a virgin. That promiscuousness was not really accepted in that lifestyle back in those days, So, sorry for the late reply, but as usual, I don't troll people who are talking to me seriously. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm just saying, like, people say stuff, you never know. Hey, Yiz. Yorick says, because you said don't get naked, my shirt is coming off. Well, good for you, bud. And Val says that I do what I want. So over on the entropy. All right, guys, let's get back to this. Going an hour already? Yeah, it's going to be hard to get through. So not trying to make it forever, but yeah, it's just the way it is. What Dare offers instead is a call to martyrdom. Not necessarily. I mean, the early church were proud to be martyrs as well. If you guys don't know, martyr just means witness. And they started using that and taking that up because they believed that they were sharing in Christ's persecution when they were being martyred. So one of the first real early Christian apologists, very intelligent man, I believe was a lawyer, Justin Martyr, wrote extensively. And he's called Justin Martyr because he was murdered. And that was considered their testimony, their witness. This is theologically sound, but not politically. Okay, sure. And unlike communism, the modern left, glomo homo, faces no external pressure. This is a strategic question of passivity versus aggression. When I think of 1453, I think not only of the priests celebrating the divine liturgy as the Turks tore into the Hagia Sophia Yeah, that's a shame too. It's a beautiful church that's now a mosque. Turning to the eastern wall and walking into it, from whence it is said he will return when the Turks are expelled, which will hopefully be soon. I think also of Constantine the 11th, Paleo, or sorry, Pelagius, I don't know, the last emperor, cutting off his imperial ornaments and rushing out to die with the common soldiers. How about some of that? Well, one, he was the leader. Two, Christ is our king. So I don't know what this argument's about. This is a question for me, though. Again, I've brought it up before, but when I start talking to all the based Orthodox and they start talking about monarchy, I don't understand. Like Jay Dyer talks about, well, yeah, if the West had followed God's plan and monarchy, we wouldn't be in this degeneracy. Well, what happened to the East? Because you all are a bunch of slaves for centuries and communism and all that stuff. So, what are we talking about? Why did God give your kingdom over to the infidel? Unless maybe God said that he was going to do that in that book of Revelations, which I think he does. I think he does. But again, we'll talk about that here soon. And we'll go through that, try and break it down and make it easy for you. Darragh talks very often of the Bolsheviks. He never mentions the whites, who, after all, could easily have won, or other heroes who actually did defeat communism, such as Francisco Franco or Augusto Pinochet. However you say his name, I know this dude, but I'm not going to be able to do it today. Pinochet. Yeah, there we go. I think that's how you say it right. My point is not that we need to encourage violence, though I'm not opposed in the least to violence in the right circumstance. Quite the opposite. My point is that people need positive, active heroes, not just heroic sufferers. Perhaps, I don't know, man. You kill somebody, you make them a martyr. Look, perfect example of a martyr today to some extent. And that would be John Brown of the Harper's Ferry event, where they used to have the U.S. Armory, and he took it hostage because he was an abolitionist. He was a terrorist, is what he was. A lot of people love John Brown. The left loves John Brown. John Brown was not the best of persons. So you could say, but he was fighting slavery, Bill. Yeah, there were plenty of abolitionists who didn't murder people and stuff who were fighting slavery. So, but there were a lot of martyrs that, generally were not good people. No man is an island in the John Donne cliche, but that means that very few have the internal resources to passively suffer. Well, that's true, but I would say that you don't use your own internal resources. You have to call on God to really do such a thing, or maybe the very few people out there that have extraordinary willpowers. They need inspiration about how the future will be better, both in this world and the next. Well, that's what the point of Christ was about. We've lost that today in the modern church. Darragh does not offer it. He instead offers a variation on the Imitation of Christ by Thomas A. Kempis. Amazing book, by the way, guys. Go read that if you're in the faith and you never have. A book I read, said to be the second only in popularity to the Bible, yes, and thought it was depressingly passive and navel glazing. Well, I guess you don't understand the faith then. The true faith, right? The faith that Christ taught, that the early church willingly went to their deaths for like 400 years. People like me may go to the back of St. Peter's line, or maybe not, since we did not take what we were given and bury it in the ground of personal introspection, but rather grew it. That's a reference to the parable of the talents. But no, burying your talents in the ground isn't going away. It's not doing anything. There's no yield. if you don't do anything with your talents. And for those of you who don't know, talent was a form of money back in the day, but that is where we get our English word for our skills, our faculties. So if you do not have enough people or enough power at this moment to impose precisely your vision of the world, where do you start? I created a YouTube channel a year ago and figured I would start talking to people and people would start following eventually. And here I am. So there are other ways though. I'm also writing a book. Here I am. It's not hard to start, guys. You form alliances with those who have similar goals, of course. Yet Dara never talks about alliances, except briefly in a connection with Charter 77 in Czechoslovakia. As he mentions, most of Charter 77's participants weren't Christian, and some were radical Marxist. But he suggests no equivalent for the religious right today. Alliances with those with alien views who, together with us, oppose the totalitarianism of the left. Why? Because he has been instructed that policing one's rightward boundary is what he must do before anything else. There are no possible leftward alliances for us. What are sometimes called good faith liberals are merely willingly dupes of the left totalitarian agenda and of no use to this fight. True, but people are waking up. People are waking up, and they will continue to wake up once they have to pay that price. Once they have to pay the cost of their beliefs, and they will. Everyone will. You all do, one way or another at some point in your life. I promise. And what did he say here that caught my eye real quick? He said, right, today alliances with those with alien views who together, yeah, again, there are plenty of people who don't have alien views, though. They have broader libertarian style views, right? Classically liberal views, classical American liberty-minded views. And we are seeing that played out, or not legislatively, but at least politically in the Mises caucus for the Libertarian Party. Like they are sweeping and taking it over. The Lawbertarians are afraid of them, so much so they had to do a coup in New Hampshire a few months ago. Is it Pinochet? Wait, how do you say that? It's just because I'm dyslexic, Stan. I can't say anything that I'm not familiar with. I have to read through rote, guys. I'm sorry, it's what I do. So if my brain perceives a slight off of a word, I mean, I'm going to say it wrong. And names are not good for me. I can never say names right. Not to mention, I forget everyone's name, including famous people. I mess them up all the time. This policing has for many decades been the original flaw of the right, for which William F. Buckley bears most of the responsibility, hobbling ourselves by permitting our enemies to dictate with whom we may ally. I don't know about that. I don't know. A lot of people, I kind of like Buckley, so I don't know. A lot of people diss on him that don't get it, because the opposite of Buckley were the neocons, pretty much. And didn't mean to do that. And the neocons obviously are bad. They're just more of the state, and they're a bunch of Trotskyites, as Michael Malice puts it. They come from that. They literally do. I'll give him a short break here, for this problem is not his alone, but general. A few months ago, the generally excellent Sohrab Armeni, this guy's talking about all kinds of folks. I have no idea who they are. I'm going to have to go through this article again and do some research. Who is much more aggressive than Dara, was hyperventilating on his own initiative that VDARE, a radically tinged anti-immigration front in which John Derbyshine is prominent, was absolutely, unequivocally beyond the pale, and nobody at all should have interacted with it. He was complaining that Trump's advisor, Stephen Miller, had shared VDARE links years ago while at Breitbart. His support for this was, I kid you not, an article from the far left Guardian newspaper, a British paper extensively quoting the odious so-called Southern Poverty Law Center, a noted hate group. I like this guy's framing, though. I'll say that. Sometimes. This shows that still now, even the dissident right of men such as Hamari voluntarily debilitates itself by letting the left set limits for it on what is acceptable discourse and what are unacceptable alliances. Yes, 100%. Mencius Mulbog, Curtis Yarvin, was talking about this a decade or more ago. So many of us talk about this. I make the point that because they have all this power, we shouldn't be out there protesting and stuff. Now, I know some of you have done that, and that's fine. Pinochet, that's right. It's Pinochet. Okay. See, Juan Cholo got it for me. Oh, I see you, Stan. I don't know, dude. I can't pronounce anything. You guys, I don't know better. Let's check the other chats real quick so I'm not too far behind. Spookstar said, would George Floyd be considered a martyr for the left? 100%. That's why they have statues toward him. All right. Nothing over there. Okay. So, where was I at here? Yes. This is a no way to win. Utterly smashes the SPLC is the way to win. Does that mean I think we should ally with racists and the like? Yes, it does. Absolutely. 6 days a week and twice on Sunday. We should ally with anyone who will help us win. To some degree. I don't really care if you're a racist as long as you don't want to act on it. That is, legislatively or physically. You can say whatever the hell you want. I mean, people got to be adults. I don't agree with, making snap judgments on people based on their ethnic characteristics or anything like that, but I get it. It's all part of the tribalism. How's it really any different than being a political bigot? I resisted this obvious conclusion for a long time, but it's true. Who then should be sought now, but not tomorrow, as allies? First, the neo-pagan right, exemplified by today's Bronze Age pervert, a movement of the great appeal to the many young men who are the backbone of the winning radical political movement. Second, the radicalist right. The left is explicitly and totally openly racist today, whipping up anti-white hatred everywhere, and it's just dumb to pretend it's not obvious. Right. They abandoned the colorblind idea long ago. Yet the demand we pretend that we are not racist to the core. Racism may be a sin, although it is no special sin, merely one of the innumerable examples of the cardinal sin, pride, and far from the worst of those. But I'm happy to ally with all sorts of sinners. I actually am too, as far as politics go, because in the end, politics aren't the kingdom of heaven. They're not what I'm seeking. But I do want to be left alone to live my life and raise my children. So there's that. And basically, I'm telling you, if you're involved with politics at all, you're only involved with sinners. I mean, people that are actually, working for governments and governments, making legislation or part of their staff, at least in the federal government. But man, given that, the majority of my life I've worked in government one way or another, there are a lot of sinners out there. And so is every politically minded Christian. Let's read that again. But I am happy to ally with all sorts of sinners. And so is every politically minded Christian if he is being honest. The violent, those who dishonor their parents, adulterers, homosexuals. In fact, it may surprise you to know I myself am a sinner. Well, all are. We all fall. We all falter. I may not want some sinners in my inner circle or around my family and children, but in pursuit of common goals, worthwhile goals, why not link arms? Well, that's the thing is politics is not religion. That's the problem. And the same with economics. Economics and politics shouldn't be tied. Religion and politics shouldn't be tied. They're all sort of separate things. Now, God explains what the ideal politics are. That is, Christ is your king. He explains what the ideal economics are, which is free markets with basically just scales. That is, just weights and measures, which we don't have. And he explains what the proper spiritual relationship to have, which is to be in relationship as the bride of Christ and a child of God. That is, you are adopted into God's family through Christ. This is the original understanding. So he's talking about worthwhile goals. And mind you, folks, the early church was not involved in politics. I know Orthodox will try and tell you other things. They weren't. Politics did not become a game to the early church until like the 3rd century. Maybe it may have been as late as the 4th, but generally speaking, they did not encourage people to go into politics. They thought that you might have to order someone's death. They encouraged folks in the military not to fight. There's actually a letter. We don't know if it's from Marcus Aurelius. Most people believe it's a forgery, but there's a letter supposedly from Marcus Aurelius talking about an account where people who were already conscripted into the Roman military were Christians and they would not fight while they were surrounded by German barbarians. And all they would do was pray. And God delivered them, apparently, if the account is true. We instinctively reject this obvious truth because to cripple us and gradually destroy us, the left forbids it. And we, since the late unlaminately Buckley, have let them so dictate to our destruction. No more, if we have any sense. The Titans must throw off the chains forged by their enemies. And that means working hand in glove with all the people the right has traditionally excluded on ideological grounds. See, that's the problem, though, that this ideological exclusion is a problem all around. This tribalism is a problem all around. This is how people create factions that destroy our liberty. This is why George Washington's farewell address suggests that we don't do such things. Of course, neither the neo-pagan right, nor the radicalist right, nor other subcurrents on the right, integralist and anarcho-libertarians, for example, have any relevant power influence today. That's not true. They actually do. They have a ton of intellectual power. They don't have any governmental power. They don't have any establishment power. But none of those systems generally would, well, maybe some of them, most of them won't put in establishment power in such a culturally influential way, which is why it's always going to go back to localism. Because the only people that are going to centralize power is not going to be some faction of the right that acts exactly like the left, except for they have Christian morals or something, more traditional values. No, that's just a might makes right. Whose values are better? Our stupid leftist values or our stupid rightist values? No, that's absurd. All this comes back to individuals and communities. And on a grander scale, the grander community all agreeing that, hey, we just need to leave each other alone. It's utopian. It's probably not going to happen because it's not how human beings work. Although, let's see, the idea is not that they ally with open racists will be the key to power, although it might be in the future. If the left continues fomenting racial hatred and white people finally react defensively, it is that doing exactly what benefits us. The making decisions on that basis only defangs the left. We must ignore their demands that we spend enormous energy policing our rightward boundary. While they never, ever, for a single second, police their leftward boundary, I see no point in allying with clowns, men like Richard Spencer. Richard Spencer is on the left, though, so your entire framework is screwed up, buddy. Like, I don't understand why people get this screwed up. Richard Spencer advocates for left wing policies, he advocates for social nationalism, socialistic nationalism, and an ethno state. The ethno state does not make him right wing. Ethno states have existed in the left. It's, you know what? It's that doesn't. It's not a thing. It doesn't matter. It's a stupid Marxist lie to obscure their freaking ties with Nazism. They're basically brothers, two sides of the same coin. Because they are ineffective and incompetent, not because of their views. Well, Richard Spencer voted for Biden, and endorsed him, and said that he was far more competent than Trump, which a lot of people who voted for Biden are finding out that Trump was not that incompetent, despite all the roadblocks in his way. I have no interest in working to implement fantasies of ethno-states. But if the white nationalists or the anti-Semites want to work with me to destroy the left, let's go. That doesn't mean all alliances are simultaneously possible or that they will be necessarily permanent. I think that Black people and other ethnic minorities should overthrow the grifters whom they let speak for them, and I'd be happy to then ally with them to destroy the left, if enough of them wanted to do so. Still, even if that were to happen, I doubt that a durable coalition of general dissent, right, white nationalists, and Black-based people would be possible. Too much divergence in worldview would likely make such a coalition untenable, except on narrow issues or against powerful outside enemies. Well, the Black folks are never going to throw off, regardless of the Brexit kind of movement, whatever. The inner city Black folks will never throw off their grifters, because their grifters tell them things that they want to hear. And their grifters are rich and manipulative, and they're propped up by the left wing, politics, and seen as heroes, despite their horrible behavior. And again, I would say this goes against, even believing that that's possible goes against the nature of humanity, and how these folks are entrenched in the system. Like, the system is so entrenched that it makes people essentially reliant upon it. And you'll find that these people are mentally enslaved. I know Black folks who are very conservative who will not vote Republican because they have been enslaved by the mindset of the slave makers, of the Democrats, of the left. It's quite funny how that works. On the other hand, historically speaking, all tribes, ethnic groups had contempt for each other, as is human nature, yet managed not infrequently to work together. The Ottoman Empire is one such example, but they were not infected with modern ideologies. The Ottoman Empire, no, but they used Islam. They used religion to bring everyone together. That's why Islam was created. Like, it was used to gather together nomadic peoples who were illiterate to conquer those areas, and they did. More broadly, I doubt if a modern country with modern communications can be successful at all if the people with it have too little in common. The United States tried with the melting pot, but that was probably a special moment with special circumstances that can never be recaptured. The melting pot, no, this is poor history. The melting pot, that word didn't even exist until the early 19-teens, maybe 1920s. It was written in a play. It was literally written by globalists to espouse the ideas of globalism. Go read Morgan Fagan, I believe. Is it Morgan C. Fagan talks about this, or go look him up. There's some really good stuff on YouTube, and he'll talk about it, and he'll tie it together with the communists and how the communists were trying to start racial tensions and race riots here in the United States, kind of like Black Lives Matter does today. Morgan Fagan talked about this back in the like 50s, 60s, and 70s, though. As well as who else talked about this? Edward G. Griffin, the John Birch Society and all that stuff. Like this information's been out there forever, and so this guy's got names I don't know, but apparently I know stuff he doesn't. So it's how it works. It's how we all get smarter, right? Let's see. The United States tried with the melting pot, but it was probably a special moment with special circumstances that can never be recaptured. The United States did not try the melting pot. That's an utter lie. It literally is. We only, until 1970, let people from European nations in. Our biggest influx of folks initially who were not part of the UK or who were not Dutch were folks from Germany. Americans were quite skeptical of it. And because Germans generally are more collectivist and outlook, traditionally, they influenced our politics. And later on, we got a bunch of Slavs in. Most of them went to the middle of the country, but at the same time, we got a bunch of Italians in and a bunch of other people who had more collectivist leanings. Remember, folks, when JFK was elected president, he was a Catholic, and people were weary of that. It's because we had a certain national identity. We didn't try a melting pot that was thrust upon us. Probably the future is a fractured United States with some degree of ethnic sorting. And within those new states, ongoing alliances of various types to ensure the left never rises again. The left will always rise again because it's the default state. It's where we come from. And people always want to go back to that noble Rousseauian savage, that noble idea. But those are problems for future Charles. Let me be positive for a moment. Unlike there, I see a path to victory against the totalitarianism of the left first. In every Warsaw Bloc country, what sustained the left is power. The left in power was not the guns of the government, but the guns of the Soviet government. We don't have that problem. And in fact, we have guns ourselves, a lot of them. Unless we let them take the guns, we can only lose so much power. If we have the will to resist, and we don't, very few people do. Second, under communism, it appeared that dissidents were only a tiny fraction of the population. This was a deliberate lie. And the same lie is told here. Global Homo only seems triumphant because our enemies propagandize us, using their total control of modern media, that it is triumphant. Amen. So stop watching that stuff. I don't think Global Homo is like the German government in the times of Franz Jager Schotter. Now, Stan, I can read German because I can actually read German, and speak it a little bit. I'm rusty as hell. It's been 20 years, but yeah. Of whom there often talks, and Australian Catholics executed by the National Socialists, the subject of a 2019 film, Hidden Life. It says, Jagerstatter faced something that actually was unstoppable. Not only a strong and determined ideological government, but one supported by the vast majority of the population. Some other dude wrote, "Force follows public opinion," and that was fighting an existential war and run by Germans, not by low IQ fat trannies with a bunch of cut green hair. I think our current ideological opponents appear strong, but are weaker than they appear, probably far weaker. No, you're underestimating the stupidity of the masses, my friend. I think you're really underestimating the stupidity of intelligent people who have turned their brains off. I know them. I talk to them all the time. Well, I don't believe that nonsense. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. NPR said, well, NPR is a highly left wing biased outlet. Now, I know you think it's not because you're brainwashed, but it is. I had such a person tell me one time that that it was a conspiracy theory that I believed that the Winter Soldier was written about libertarianism and freedom and a totalitarian government. They didn't catch that theme in there. And I thought, oh my God, you are such a snob. What is wrong with you? Because the writers of that movie themselves said that's what that movie is about. But, smart people who were stupid, intellectual idiots, they don't tend to want to hear anything that challenges them or outside of their sphere. They have to dismiss it immediately, which is why when I embrace the idea. Do I talk about conspiracy theories? 100%. Do I talk about crazy stuff like, I don't know, aliens in the center of the earth? No. Maybe that's real. I don't know, but it seems pretty far-fetched to me. It's cool to talk about, I guess, but I'm not that into it. I'm into, the Great Reset, because that's a real conspiracy that they're openly talking about. Or the Anglo-American alliance that, again, is real. If you don't think that's real, well, you need to go do some homework. And, that is 100% real. Third, regardless of power balance, unreality cannot continue forever. What ended communism in Eastern Europe was not a wish for blue jeans or liberal democracy, but a wish to return to ordered Christian liberty. No, it was financial. It was 100% financial, and people decided they were tired of it. That's what happened. And also in Russia, it happened because they allowed books and media that were from the West to be out there. Before that, they were restricting everything they could. You would get gulagged if you had a piece of Western media that wasn't censored appropriately. Go watch Comrade Detective over on Amazon. That'll inform you. It's also hilarious, by the way. 1000% communist propaganda. That'll inform you how it was. Because what the left offers can never satisfy. Most of all, it cannot satisfy the young. They will not tolerate endlessly being fed porn in their pods. I don't know about that. They grow up with it. The wish for reality that satisfies will always rise again. There are quotes, a Slavic dissident. This soft tyranny will end. The truth has power to end every tyranny. He notes that no dissident leader under communism in the 1970s and 80s expected communism to fail in their lifetimes, and they were completely wrong. Yes, hope is not a plan, but being on the side of reality is an asset. Yeah, they were wrong. They just went through 100 years though of nonsense. Not quite, and not quite in the 80s, right? But more or less. I mean, literally, when you have Democracy in America, de Tocqueville, when you have guys like de Tocqueville making predictions about the Americas and how they're going, and Russia and how they're going, and how that they're going to be ahead, and you're predicting it quite accurately and saying, hey, the Russians are going to have this collectivist thing where the Americans are going to have this individualist thing. It obviously started long before. What specific mechanism then? Some, including Dara and some modes, agree that we can go on as we are at this moment we can go on as we are at this moment forever. That we will get semi-competent digital totalitarianism as far as the eye can see, offering Murti Bing along with Rizad Leg Utko, I don't know all these names, concerning coercion to freedom. This is false. Perhaps the most important truth to recognize is that our society is so very, very fragile as the Wu plague has exposed. Well, in what way? I don't think our society is that fragile. I think it is in the hands of all these multinational corporations and globalists in the government, and they can just cut everything off because we don't have freedom. We're slaves. We have fiat money. We don't have currency in the hands of the people. It's in the hands of the government. We don't have ownership. We don't even own our properties. I pay a mortgage off only so I can go pay property taxes on it the rest of my life. It's insanity. This isn't a state of liberty in which we live in anymore, and it hasn't been for quite a long time. Let's see. It says it only takes a crystal-like war, economic depression, plague, or some other severe or prolonged crisis that brings the legitimacy of the liberal democratic system into question. True, his conclusion is typically pessimistic, that the left will use the crisis to end any freedoms remaining. That's silly. We're going to get, and we should welcome, despite the likely hardship, the cost to ourselves, a hard reset, which is coming whether we want to or not. Whatever it is, most likely economic collapse, a great many people will be very, very unhappy and desperate as a result. Right, which is why I keep saying get prepared. Guys, this goes on for so much longer. But you all can read the rest of it if you would like. Let me get it back up to the top here. All you got to do is Google lies, live not by lies. But specifically, this is the Positol magazine, and this was written by Old Charles. We'll see if we can view all posts by Charles here. The Aztec and their history. Huh, interesting. So, in any case, before I get out of here, I actually didn't think I would go this long today, but hey, I want to read something interesting from old Noor bin Laden. This is NoorBinLaden.com, and yes, she is a bin Laden. Never knew her uncle, but interesting letter. I think she wrote this back last September, November. Always stayed on the down low because of her last name, but came out in the dangers of our nation, the dangers to this republic. Of course, again, I would say that the republic died, I don't know, somewhere back around 1860-ish, seemed to have died then. But that's just one perspective. 240 years ago, the resolve, courage, and wisdom of your founding fathers forever changed the course of history. For the first time, with the ratification of the Declaration of Independence, mankind was offered an unmatched societal idea and dignified way of life. Human beings were recognized for what we truly are by nature, all created free and equal, endowed with inalienable rights, which do not derive from any government, but from our Creator. With your Constitution, your founders sealed these God-given rights and protected them by instituting a limited form of self-government along with a robust justice system. This combination keeps the promise of freedom and future generations alive and allows for human injustice to be rectified. That is obviously not a true statement. Because those were not kept alive by these systems. That's not how these things preserve. Systems always break down, especially complex ones. This, America, is what makes your nation exceptional. This is why you have stood as a beacon of democracy and hope for all subjugated peoples over the past 2 centuries. During some of our darkest hours, we remember how you fought for those who couldn't defend themselves from tyranny at the cost of your own brave men. The world is forever in your debt for your sacrifice, and we are grateful for the refuge you provide those who can flee persecution. This America is your heritage and the reason we still look to you as our champion of liberty to this day. Those currently fighting for their freedoms across the world value the plight of the brave founding fathers who forever link the model to which we can hold our government accountable. From the peaceful Hong Kong protesters who proudly brandished the American flag in the streets to the Iranian students who refused to walk over a painted version of it on the ground of a Tehran university, people who live under oppressive regimes now firsthand that being know firsthand that being free has no price, and they know that freedom is the ultimate shelter for their downtrodden. Watch the gratuitous violence, streets burn, buildings and statues being defaced in America over these past months. I am heartbroken to see how an entire generation was successfully brainwashed into hating the very nation that has yielded the most freedom, justice, and equality anywhere in the world. I am also highly distressed by the blatant erosion of the various levels of your most basic individual rights and freedoms as guaranteed by your Bill of Rights, from arbitrary censorship of speech to unlawful, politically motivated abuses of justice. Well, welcome to the party, lady, because this has been going on for way longer than you became aware of it. I can promise you that. So when she said that, oh, these things are enshrined by our system of government, that is just not true, folks. It's enshrined by the people. Remember, as the story goes, Benjamin Franklin was approached by a boy and said, what kind of government do we have? And he says, a republic, if you can keep it. And that's the thing, is that all the founders knew it was incumbent upon the people, and all of the leftists knew that the people we can make fat and happy, we could give them cakes and circuses, and we could control them. Because in the end, folks, the difference between the right and the left is authoritarian and liberty. Now, I know it comes from the French Revolution, but that's actually what we were looking at in the French Revolution. The monarchy might not have been the best at the time, but trust me, it was a position between liberty and authoritarianism. Because the revolutionaries were wicked, evil men. And they wanted to enslave all of the French society. They wanted to enslave them in the name of freedom, though. In the name of freedom. The question is, how did we get to this point? They want you to believe that this is a recent phenomenon. The truth is that the undoing of America has been decades in the making. It's been a century in the making. The globalists, deep state, swamp, whichever name you call them, have been hard at work to weaken American sovereignty in standing as world leader, intent on erecting a new system of world governance where they would be in total control. They are seeking to undermine the fundamental principles of your country, a government for the people, by the people, replacing it instead with a world order of international institutes, ultimately perpetuated by a caste of technocrats, oligarchs, and international bankers. Though your Constitution stands firm in their way, it never deterred them. Like a Trojan horse, they infiltrated governmental and intelligence agencies and all realms of society. Yeah, McCarthy kind of pointed that out. Leon Skolson wrote about it in The Naked Communist, then read the, 50 some odd, 47 points, whatever it was, on the House floor. Yeah, we ignored all that, though. And today you still have leftists that talk about how McCarthy was some sort of evil guy that did horrible things, and he did nothing. He did nothing. He did nothing wrong, and he really didn't get anything done. And he definitely never went after Hollywood. That's all fiction. Education, media, entertainment, culture, at their disposal, tools of the mass population influence, propaganda, fake news, and censorship. By pushing their Marxist, socialist, progressive agenda for years, they set out to destroy your fundamental values and divide you. They negate God, dissolve the family unit, and deserved us from moral objectivity, effectively leaving a vacuum of degeneracy, cognitive dissonance, and absurdity in its wake. Yuri Bezmenov tried to warn us. This social engineering operation took place as we were lulled into a sense of comfort and complacency due to modernity's technological progress and liberalism's appeal. Interesting with Yuri. Yuri is important because he did this for a living, right? And then he changed his mind, and then he blew it up. But it was G. Edward Griffin and the John Birch Society that brought it to you. They have a very long history of uncovering this stuff and have been called conspiracy theorists and kooks for well nigh 50 plus years. So, you got to pay the price, folks. In reality, we were being driven further down a path of enslavement while they solidified their plans for a covert power grab. However, they didn't count on a great awakening of the people. Tired of being crushed by their self-serving economic policies, nor did they foresee that COVID-19 would highlight the system's gross failings from an overdependence on global supply chain and corruption. Yeah, you're totally wrong on that. They knew exactly what they were doing when they allowed that to be released or whatever happened. Or even if it was an accident, an accidental lab leak, quite possibly, the opportunity was seized upon. Hard to say though, since Event 201 happened right before that. What was the White House? The Crimson scare, whatever. The White House exercise that was not part of Trump or anything, but the White House in general, because these are war games that these people do on the regular. But Event 201 was quite interesting given how precise it was. They didn't anticipate that we would all rally online to share information and real news, bypassing the controlled mainstream media outlets. Above all, they never thought Hillary Clinton would lose. Now, I believe that. I think they didn't think Hillary would lose. They didn't need to fortify their elections like they did this last time. Because who's going to vote for the orange man? But as far as the social media thing, they totally expected that. Why do you think they kept talking about fake news? The whole fake news thing that Trump appropriated was started by the left and media outlets against the internet, and Hillary was using it immediately. Trump appropriated it, which is why they went against it. That, my friends, go back and look at the history of, was built up over some period of time for legacy media to use against you. Since President Trump's victories, these nefarious forces have done everything in their power to stop him from reversing past administrators' destructive policies. They have failed, hoax after hoax, despite the relentless attacks on all fronts. President Trump has demonstrated that he is the only leader who can save us from the bleak future. Now, she did this right before released this right before November, so obviously it didn't happen. As evidenced by his first term, results of his first policy speaking for themselves. Now, maybe she's one of the Q-sters too. I don't know, man, but Trump's not the end all be all, never was going to be. But I supported him because, yeah, it looked 1,000 times better than what we've had in the past. Domestically, he removed handicapped regulations to American economic growth, rebuilt a depleted military. There were a ton more regulations he could have gotten rid of, though. Brought back, and he also needed to get rid of a lot of military folks. Brought back manufacturing, not enough though. Revamped dying industries and renegotiated trade deals and cutting taxes. Achieved energy independence. That was a huge one. Curbed immigration. That was a huge one. All of which contributed to setting record unemployment rates. He also saved your taxpayer money by withdrawing from corrupt international organizations and agreements, yada, yada, yada. We don't need to, praise Trump for this, that, and the other thing. By strengthening America from within, he bolstered his plans when it came to foreign policy. Thanks to his vision and tactical use of diplomatic avenues, he has made a much safer place since taking office. To name a few achievements, he stood up to China, kept us out of new wars, made Europe comply with NATO agreements. Yeah. By the way, folks, we're never getting out of NATO. That's all part of the New World Order. So don't expect that to happen. I'm surprised we can renegotiate NAFTA, honestly. With President Trump at the helm, America stands a chance, yada, yada, yada. Above all achievements, it will be trepidated with a Biden-Harris presidency and a dream of America's enemies to see their to see her weak on her knees would be fulfilled. Make no mistake, America, you are under attack, supported by the fake news propaganda machine and violent Marxist groups such as Antifa with their ISIS-type tactics. They have pushed their agenda through fear-mongering, hypocrisy, lies, and destruction unto you, the American people, and for one motive only: power. The escalation of the past 4 years is your preview of what to expect should we lose an abject reputation of the Judeo-Christian values that utter disgrace for your individual rights. These insecurities, if successful, would sign the unraveling of law and order at the end of your republic as we know it. Tyranny would inevitably ensue. And it says, America, you're at the edge of a precipice. Well, that's done and gone as far as the election goes. But if we look at this and juxtapose this hope, what she's looking at, compared to the last article and what America should do, one of the things that she highlights at the end here is the quest for power, which is all that this prior article seems to be calling for. It again, why are our tactics any more moral than theirs would be the question. I'm not looking to gain power, folks. I am looking that we can get enough people in this world to be intelligent enough and brave enough to say, hey, we don't need these systems. We're going to live without them. I know anarchism, anarcho-capitalism is 100% utopian. Trust me, I figured this out in my late 20s after entertaining the idea for like 3 years. It just is not going to work. But what is possible, potentially, is that we can maintain small governments and small, communities that don't allow this kind of tyranny to seep into it. We can raise our families, our children together. I don't have all the answers. I don't think any of these people do. But what I do know is that we need to act, and we cannot live with these lies. We have to start being more and more bold as time goes on and get people woke up. So with that, I'm going to check for super chats and stuff. Anti-Commie said, Sten, you allow high to sprout Slav slurs here on Entropy. Of course, Anti-Commie would say such a thing. Also, that was my mandatory gamer words. Yes. See y'all next time. Have to leave. All right, Val. See ya. I'm check over here. Oh, okay. That's right. Pinochet. That's right. Okay. So now I know who that is. Argentina, right? But you said they all correct in common pronunciations in Chile. I thought Pinochet was. Is it Argentina or Chile? Yeah. Either one. Yeah. That's why Stem's asking me why I don't know. That's what I said. I know the name. I recognize it. And I see it. But guys, I got so much stuff going up in my head all the time. So thank you for that, because that reminded me. All right, guys. Seneca wrote about hold on before I get it here. Seneca wrote about voluntary discomfort and how it empowers you. Maybe that's what we need to look into. Can't punish us if we want to be if we don't want what they are selling. Yeah. OG ANCAP equals Marxist. Actually, yes, more or less. Yep. Because one could say that it's a sin to take, thus a conflict, and therefore it would be a discrimination to fire over it. Yeah, Civil Rights Act of 1964. I guess you guys are arguing in the chat. I don't know. I'm not going to go through all that because it's like 5 o'clock, and I could hear my daughter woke up and she was screaming, and my wife probably still has work to do. So, guys, thanks for being here. I know I don't normally do Thursday streams, but like I said, I'm going to try and start doing streams throughout the week more often. But Tuesdays and Fridays, 3 p.m. is my normal time. So I'll be here tomorrow with a stream on Stoicism and Christianity. Not sure if Aiden will be here or not. I just messaged her today. So we'll see how that works. I think let me get this off. Yeah. Let me move this thing over. And since you guys weren't around when I came on, let me I'll play as an outro clip. I will play my little intro clip. So, with all that said, guys, I will be back tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern. And this has been All Minus One. My name is Bill, and I wish you all well.
Have a little perspective about the stuff we howl about here. I'm sorry your professor said something you didn't like. That won't be a problem with the Taliban because you're not allowed to go to school. In Saudi Arabia, grown women can be jailed for doing the kind of things we think of as routine without the permission of a male guardian. China rounds you up if you're the wrong religion and puts you in camps. More children in Burkina Faso work than are in school. Only 5% of Burundians have electricity. The homicide rate in Honduras is 8 times what it is here. The inflation rate in Venezuela is 2,719%. The Philippines, in the last 5 years, has put to death 27,000 low-level drug dealers. My old job. In North Korea, people starve to death. The only people who starve here are doing it for a role. And the only people who have no water live in California. If you think America is irredeemable, turn on the news or get a passport and a ticket on one of those sketchy airlines that puts its web address on the plane. There's a reason Afghan mothers are handing their babies to us.